My name is Amy Porter. I've been a member of Salem Church since 2009. My husband and I came here after moving to Catonsville, Maryland. We had been in the Virginia area and relocated up here. Initially, when we started looking for a church, well, I had grown up in the Lutheran church when I was a little girl. Went to a Missouri Synod Lutheran church. I went to Lutheran church school and was involved in all that for a long time. And then for a while, I left the church. And my husband grew up Catholic, and he likewise had the same situation, kind of got to a point where, life fell apart for him too, and he just kind of, just left church altogether. And, we, had gone our own ways, done all that type of thing. And when we first got together, before we got married, I had run into some situations with some family members, my grandparents, who I had to transition them into an assisted living type of situation, so I had to go back to my hometown, which is in the Midwest, and it was like a 4-month ordeal. And while I was back there, I was so grateful for the church because I had so much help, and had I not had their help, I'm not really sure how I would have gotten through it. It was a 4-month longer process. It was really hard. So when I returned, and this is again before my husband and I got married, I said, I know we haven't been going to church. I don't want this to be a deal breaker, to change the rules at this stage in the game. But I said, I really realized, it's kind of like, you're walking in the desert and you don't really realize how thirsty you are. I really need to get my butt back into church. And I said, so, I don't want to, make this an, arduous process if you're not ready for it, but this is something I needed to do. And at the time he said, okay, well, he said, Amy, don't worry. He said, I think I could give you 1 weekend a month. And I said, okay, all right, that's great. So we'll start church shopping. And so we, went around a whole bunch of churches in this area, and probably for, maybe like two or 3 months. And I think the thing, we were looking for a church that had a good balance, had, both a good representation. You had young people, but you also had older people. A church that was vibrant, a church that, seemed like it was growing, and a church that was friendly, that wasn't just so into just liturgy that, you kind of lost the whole sense of, the spirit of the people. And it was interesting. There were a lot of churches we went to, and sadly, a lot of them that they're just, you had congregations where it was, a large number of predominantly elderly individuals and very, very little youth. And at the time, my husband and I were looking to, start a family, so we wanted to have youth. Or we had situations where, there were just no joy. There was just, people just kind of seemed like they were droning their way through the service, and no one came up afterwards. No one said hello. No one said, anything. We kind of hi, bye, whatever, and we never went back. So we'd gone to all these different services, and we finally, the last things that I had was Salem. And I told my husband, I said, okay, well, we've got one more. And he goes, Amy, we've been doing this for months. And I was like, well, let's just give it one more try. And, I said, and he was like, well, you found this other church. You kind of like that. I'm only going to go once a month. I was like, okay, well, but if you're going to go, I want you to enjoy the one time you go. And so we came into Salem, and just, wow, from the get-go, when we walked in the door, all these people started coming up immediately and just so welcoming and just very, very friendly. The dynamic was incredible. You saw young, old, little kids, just this robust kind of congregation. And we sat there, and there were 3 things that happened during that service that were just immensely powerful for us. One of the first things is that there was a little bit of a temple talk right before the service started. And we now know who it was. At the time we didn't know who it was, but it was the person who leads our Guardians of Eden project. And, he got up to talk about some of the environmental projects that they're working on. And he got up and he tripped and papers went everywhere. And, suddenly 4 people jump up. Everyone's cracking jokes. Everyone's making fun. And my husband leans over and he goes, I'm liking this church. These people know how to have fun, and they're not so, they're not so uptight. And, and so he got up, he did his talk, and, proceeded with the service. In the middle of the first hymn, at that time, our pastor emeritus, Pastor Ed, came down. In the middle of the hymn, it came right down, and hi, I'm Ed, and who are you? And we said, this is, I'm Amy, this is Ike, and he said, we're welcoming you, come on up, we have an open communion, and if you're a baptized believer, come join us, we'd love to have you here, and I'll talk to you after the service. And, I turned to me again, and he goes, I'm loving this. He goes, how many other churches have we been at that, it was restrictive? This is the first time I've been invited to communion since I was 13 years old in the Catholic Church. And so we get up there, and we, get up to the way our communion runs here. We have a communion rail you go up to. And we sat up there, or, knelt up there, and Pastor Ed came up, and he was like, he remembered our names from like 2 seconds of, meeting us during the middle of a hymn. And, I, returned to my seat, and we got back, and my husband, to this day, it just kind of warms my heart. He just was kneeling, when we got back to the pews, and I leaned over, and I'm like, are you okay? And he goes, I'll talk to you after, and I was like, okay, And, after the service, everything again, really wonderful. All these people, hi, welcome, who are you? Come on, that kind of, we love the church, we'd love to have you back. And we just had such a really warm presence. And we got to, the narthex area, and we were, saying, goodbyes to the pastors and, that type of thing. And the thing that struck me is that, we mentioned that we had been looking around at churches, and we'd been looking at all these different churches in the area. And they said, you know what? He said, we would love, well, I think it was Pastor Dave who said this. He said, we would love to have you at our church. We will love to meet with you. We can come out and talk to you about, what our church, has to offer and that type of thing. But if this service wasn't for you, we're connected with the community. We'll be happy to help, refer you to other places. We just would love to see you get in church. I thought, who does this? Who is so open enough, to say, hey, we want you at our church, but we just want you in church, and we got out in the car, and, my husband was really pensive at the moment, and we he turned to me, and, he said, Amy, he goes, we found our church. And I said, well, that's incredible. And then I said, what happened there at communion? And he said, I don't know how to describe it. He said, it's just when I was up there, he said, I felt like there was just something that said, welcome back. And it just, so for that was sort of like the handwriting was on the wall. And from that point on, we started coming, and we started coming regularly. And now the joke that my husband and I have in all of this now is that, initially he was only going to give me one Sunday a month. And here we are now 4 years later, the man who, now he's vice president of the church council. We're here, we're involved in all these things because you can't help but not get involved here. This church just, it welcomes people to become involved, to become a part of things. And I think that's part of becoming part of the church community. But what I think is funny is there've been those Sunday mornings where it's like, I want to sleep in. And he's like, come on, Porter, come on, let's go up, let's get up and get some God. I'm like, what happened to the one Sunday a month? So it's, kind of comical. So.